was just a few years ago, and after Trump disrespected Arlington Cemetery, I had to go back and watch some of the videos and pictures of my dad's funeral at Arlington Cemetery. Wow, talk about a ritual. Unbelievable. We started in the chapel, I preached and we did that, and then this major kind of took the reins. And it's interesting that the caisson, which the coffin is put on, a caisson is basically a military transport for ammunition. The wagons, the caisson would take the ammunition to the battle and would bring the dead back. And so a coffin is placed on a caisson. And we walked to the grave site. There was a full band, there was drums, there was a 21-gun salute. It was amazing. And I'll tell you, when they folded that flag and handed it to my son, I never felt so proud, so humbled, so American, so everything. What a profound, amazing thing. And if we look, we see that funerals are probably the first ritual. I read reports that go back 300,000 years. There's a study from 130,000 years ago, and 12,000 years ago is where we have the first really recorded history of a funeral. Rituals. Rituals comes from the Latin, which means that which pertains to rites, And these rites, these rituals, they're in religion, of course they are. They're in government, they're in the military, they're in our food, they're in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and weddings and classrooms, they're in rites of passage, they're in these unbelievably hard places that help us with all kinds of things. And they put us in connection to our past, to our future, to our community, to ourself, to our meaning. They allow us to let go and move on. They basically help us with our anxiety. They're part of transformations in terms of rites of passage to adulthood. They're in ministry, in our jobs. They motivate and move us and define what is meaningful in our life. In studies of ritual, they saw that in basketball, those people did a little ritual before they shot. And it's believed that those who do the ritual will do a better shot than those who don't. And I'm a baseball fan, right? Watching someone go up to bat and do a little ritual. Ichiro would always do a ritual of swinging his bat and pointing it out to the outfield. Killer hitter. And if you talk to baseball players, they swear by their rituals. It has to do with centering themselves. All our social institutions are permeated with ritual. And speaking of baseball, in the seventh inning stretch, between the innings there, what do? Everybody sings "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." Great ritual. Just all of a sudden you are part of 50,000 people. It's an amazing thing. And if we look at it, graduations, inaugurations, courtrooms, please rise as the judge comes in Congress, look at all the protocols in Congress. And then there's holidays, traditions. My wife and I, we have a drink at night and an appetizer, and we always lift our glass and make a toast. It's just this small little ritual that we do. And my favorite ritual is cooking. For me, the cooking is a ritual because it's a place where I have hands on this junction where death becomes new life. I mean, that broccoli really wants to flower and become more broccoli, but we cut it off and we eat it and it dies and we live. So today, we're talking about rituals. Where in our life do we look for rituals? Where do we create rituals? And I implore our listeners, take time, create some rituals in your life. Stop for a minute and look at what your rituals are in your life, and those places where we seem to pay attention. Because rituals mark these important events. Even though they might not be large funeral events, they might be just a lifting our glass in a toast. So today we're talking about rituals, and I just kind of laid out a real simple background, but I want to get my cohorts' views on ritual. Mary Ann Rudis is coming to us from Spokane Valley. Bob Hayes from Florida. My name is Red Hawk. We're here at the deep end looking at those things and processes that life cannot do without. And where do we go and how do we go? And here's what I see. No matter where we go or how we go, it will be ritualized. It will somehow cause us to stop, take note, and honor and lift up whatever it is, because that's what we do. There is no new meaning that is not ritualized. So I'm going to start with Bob. Bob, what do you say about this ritual stuff?
You're absolutely correct. Rituals permeate our life. They're in everything. They've always been in everything. You talk about hundreds of thousands of years ago, there's evidence of rituals. Well, there's even, since the first century, philosophers and what we would now call social scientists have been discussing rituals and have been comparing rituals in one group versus another group. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, the flowering of cultural anthropology, where they would study all of these different groups that we were encountering, and they would find rituals in all of these groups. And they would conclude that every group has a different ritual, but yet they all share characteristics such that they use symbols to bring them the people together and to share meaning and to make them feel important, to make them feel like there's support for them in certain critical events in their life, whether it be a birth, a wedding, a funeral, as you say. And it seems to be a natural occurrence that's part of being a human being. And I'm not sure that we create rituals or that rituals create us. It's the chicken and the egg kind of thing. And I think we can certainly be aware of the rituals that we encounter, but I'm not sure that we can actively create them.
Yeah. And yet, they came from somewhere, but I think you hit something on the nail on the head when you talked about we're in a relationship with this aspect of consciousness that creates ritual, and the ritual does create us. I think that's something we can explore a little bit more. And again, a sequence of activities involving gestures, words, actions, revered objects, etc., etc. Mary Ann, what do you say about all this?
Well, I think that, yes, rituals are all around us. They're with us. And some of them are more formal than others. And I think they give us an opportunity, especially when you have a prescribed ritual, like a funeral or a wedding ceremony or certain things that are traditions that get passed down. And so I think rituals also have this great ability to connect us to our past and right here in the present. So it's bringing these past forward into now, which connects us to our ancestors or connects us to just human beings in general when we start to do these things. And there are rites of passages, there are graduations, and there are, I mean, every year a birthday, a birthday celebration, those can be ritualized. Some people do the same thing every year. But I also think that, and they help us to center ourselves. But I also think that we do create rituals all the time. I mean, even something as mundane as your morning ritual. So when you get up in the morning, you get up at a certain time every day. You go and you do whatever it is you do every morning. And then we all have had those days where either you sleep in or for some reason you have to skip your morning ritual and rush out into your day, and it throws off your day. So in that way, I think they are centering. They do help us connect to who we are and how we want to be. And so I used to think that they were silly. And I've watched kind of like the funeral industry over the last 10, 20, 30 years. And a lot of the rituals that we've gotten rid of. You don't see funeral processions anymore, or very rarely do you ever see those kind of things. And those were the norm. Those were rituals that came. Also, we've moved away from certain things in these to celebrations of life. To, many people don't do even services anymore for those kind of things. So it's interesting to watch things shift and change as we start to understand things. But we also see that they all go back again. There's this reaching back, and I can see people now scrambling to, people are feeling untethered. And so rituals are a way to tether you to your values, to who you are. And as we see them start to break down by certain people in our culture, and there's this backlash to where, no, we want to maintain these things. We want to, and it does bring a sacredness into our mundane lives. Anyway.
Amen.
So.
And science has started looking at rituals, which is really interesting to me. And neurologically, they say ritual is a way of signaling to the brain that everything is as it should be. It's all been done before, and it's going to be okay. Unlike prehistoric times when people arguably needed a nervous brain to protect us from predators and other threats, modern life is easier without anxiety, and it does assuage this anxiety. It does help us see that as we're connected to the past, that although things might be happening faster and quicker and everything, it's the same thing that's happening. And we can be connected to that through our rituals.
And to each other.
Amen. I think that's a big piece right there, Marianne, to each other.
Yeah, there's a couple of interesting terms that I came across as I was looking over different kinds of discussions of ritual. And one was that a ritual provides a vocabulary of sentiment.
Oh,
and I think
great.
that's what Marianne was just getting at, is how do we bring ourselves together? How do we get the idea, or how do we feel that other people are going through the same kind of feelings that we are, because we're all doing the same kind of ritual and we're sharing that. And interesting point is that Hobbes made 300 years ago that a ritual involves worshiping not just the divine, but also eminent people. So when you have the coronation of a king or a queen, or you have people attending a Taylor Swift concert, and the rituals that they go through, exchanging friendship bracelets, all of these different things enable them to share their feelings about whether it be a politician or an entertainer or a religious figure. it always comes back to sharing. It always comes back to, does this person over here feel the same way I do? And it's a comforting thing to have the idea, well, maybe they do feel a little bit the same as I do.
Yeah. And you know, you both intoned it, and that's that it really is about, to a large extent, anxiety management. Rituals, in one psychology journal I read, rituals that combine positive prescriptive elements with negative ones force the mind to engage memory and motor control in a way that would not occur with regular routine. Research shows engaging in rituals is temporarily appeasing and mitigates anxieties. I think Taylor Swift, I have some friends who went to a Taylor Swift concert. They didn't want to go, but their kids wanted them to go. And one woman wrote one of the most poetic and beautiful pieces after going, saying, I can't believe what just happened here. And it's this connection. Not only are you not alone, but you're really, really not alone. You are part of something that is so much more profound. And with the proper gestures and words and dance and movement and holding your phone up, you know, during that time where we all become the sky. I went to a U2 concert, we did that, and literally you could not tell where the sky stopped and the phones began. It was just a universe that was created. And we're coming across these emerging rituals in a way, and they're organic. It's like this unconscious stuff just wells up and demands us to honor it. And in honoring it, we get connected, again, to each other, to the universe. I know for me, in my psychedelic days, I had little rituals that I would do out in the woods. They were mine, and they connected me in a way that was greater than anything that was me. And I think that that's a huge piece of ritual to help us fit into an incomprehensible universe, if you will. Does that make sense?
It does. But I want to raise the question, though. Are all rituals positive? Or can we be overcome by rituals sometime to the detriment of our mental health or our self-liberty? Where do we draw that line, and how do we become aware of when the ritual is trying to take us over as opposed to trying to support us?
An example, Bob. Give me an example of that. Yeah.
I'll give you one. The Third Reich. You know,
Okay.
and
the whole way that the Third Reich held these ritualistic rallies and so forth. We may see similar kinds of things going on today, but you'll see the same kind of motions, the same kind of cheers, the same kind of songs and so forth. That's why virtually every decent songwriter in recent years has come out and asked Trump not to use their song at his rallies, because they don't want to be a part of that particular ritual.
Amen. Marianne, what do you have to say on that?
Well, you know, I think that it's, again, even things like the Third Reich, when they, you know, the rituals they did, it was still connecting. It's still connected all of those people to something bigger than themselves. Although it was something that many of us would not have wanted, and yet the participants were viewing it as something positive. And so that's where that whole idea of it is shaping you. What sprang to my mind was the Pledge of Allegiance every morning in school. You get up and you put your hand over your heart and you you pledge allegiance to the United States. And so where does that start to become what we're talking about with the Third Reich?
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
And it's interesting because most people think that particular ritual goes back to the beginning of the country when it doesn't. There was no such thing before the 50s when we had this whole, McCarthyism and all of this kind of stuff, and you had to prove that you were a real American. Sounds familiar again.
I have to say,
that's where that idea that the rituals shape you.
Yeah.
And so we're using them to shape us. And how many of us are caught up in this unconsciously and performing these rituals that are shaping us and the way we think and the way we see the world. So
but I have to confess, I totally affirm the Pledge of Allegiance. I think it's a really good thing. The problem is they don't teach enough government to go along with it, which is a whole other issue. And now we have to talk about, truth and facts, because so much of ritual has to do with metaphor and allegory and all these different symbolic things that you said, Bob. And sometimes those things that we are attaching to are not healthy. And I think that's part of the exploration of ritual is we get back to, over and over, we keep coming back to on the deep end, health and wholeness. What constitutes true health and true wholeness? What are the rituals that are going to engender true health and true wholeness? And I think that's part of the journey. And part of what I would like to see our listeners do, be aware of your rituals, of those, Marianne, you opened up, in the morning we have these rituals we do, brushing our teeth, washing our face, making breakfast, having a cup of coffee, which is huge. And is a whole industry, ritualistic industry, if you will. So creating rituals and being aware of them, I think, is huge. And I think we're creating rituals all the time. I think the rituals that originally started with bringing lighters to a concert and everybody holding up a lit lighter, and then it became the phones, holding up the phones. Those are rituals that are now in just about every large concert there is. And something is happening there in consciousness. And this is the piece I want to get back to the deep end. Rituals are an expression of something going on in our consciousness. Many times they emerge through these unconscious means. I mean, the first funerals when a parent or someone lost a child, those rituals would help us to not let the anxieties overcome us, but allow us to process through that. I think of my dad's ritual of the caisson and the 21 gun salute, and how, I had no idea it was going to have that effect on me, but it rooted me in something so much greater than me or my dad or the million graves that we were walking among. It rooted me in a meaning that I don't think I could ever express in words, if that makes sense. And I think ritual does tend to take us beyond words, if you will.
Yeah. I think as you were talking about that, I just did an ancient ritual, by taking my family's ashes to the sea. And burial at sea is the oldest form of burial. And the ritual that we went through, the steps that were taken, the words that were spoken, the connection to all of life, the connection to the past, the connection to each other was extremely powerful. And I'm with you there. The words are not there to adequately express how that felt and what that was like. And it was profound, and it's still that ripple that is now a part of my consciousness. That ritual that it becomes another part of the human story of where we're going, what I'm doing, even personally, what I'm doing, where I'm going. And so I think that the idea that we are connected to something larger, to me, is what the rituals can, the big ones can evoke. Even, and the smaller ones, they connect us to our own lives and how we're going to be in the world. So,
amen. And I think that you put your finger on a couple things that are very important. One, how unconscious these things are and how much bigger than even language it is. Ritual is literally another order of language, which seems to me is speaking very loud. When I was doing pastorate stuff, communion was, speaking the words, saying the prayers, all that. That was all good. But communion, there was something about that was grounding. I would go to a hospital room and people couldn't remember their kids' names or what they looked like. But as soon as we instituted the words of communion, they were there. They were right there, and they could respond to me. They would take communion. It was a thread that connected them all the way. And it's a thread that was greater than even family or any of that. And so, ritual, man, it's a trip. So we've already spent almost all of our time. Bob, final comments on ritual?
Well, just that it's important that we recognize how powerful rituals are and how positive they can be, that connection that we make with each other. Emil Durkheim, one of the earliest sociologists, said that it doesn't even matter if a participant believes in what's going on in the ritual. Just the fact that he or she is acting through it connects them to the others that are engaged in the ritual. And Marianne, you mentioned, doing the burial at sea. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you'll be able to talk with your son, talk with other people who were there or who were involved in it, and suddenly you're sharing that moment again. And that's something that's very precious, and it's something that, again, I think is part of the human experience.
Amen. Marianne, final comments?
Yeah, I think that rituals are connecting, and to be intentional with rituals is very, very powerful. I think it's much more powerful than we actually realize. And your story about the communion for people that don't even remember their families, and yet there's that ritual that evokes something that goes on and that is still there, very much a part of us, even if it's not conscious. So I think they're powerful.
Amen. And again, what I really would love our listeners to do is just be more conscious, be more aware of those things, those gestures, those words, those actions that you take that ground you, that connect you, and lift them up, live them fully. I mean, for me, cooking used to be just something that I had to do. Now, it's a ritual that has so much depth. So, I'm going to go somewhere next podcast. We're going to politics, left and right. I've been reading all this stuff, and I'll be honest, the history, it's a slow read for me. But politics is something that is here, and there are interests that are being expressed in politics, and those interests have fallen out into the left and the right. The left and the right. Where did they come from? How do we talk about them? What is the real meaning behind the left and the right? The social people versus the conservative people, the free business, open market people versus those who want to protect the workers and make sure they're safe, to keep regulations. You know, it's an amazing thing, and it's not new. It's been going on for hundreds of years. Until then, my friends, I'm going to say this ritualistically. Blessings.